What if I told you climate change is a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese? Would you believe me? Luckily, there's been a decline of climate change deniers over the past few years, and it seems that public opinion is finally catching up with what scientists have been saying for decades. According to a Times article titled, "Americans' Denial of Climate Change Hits Record Lows" by Warland in 2015, only 16% of people in the United States believe that climate change is not real. Public opinion has always been behind the consensus of the scientific community. Today I'll propose that gender falls under that same category. For centuries we've been told whether or not we are a boy or a girl, and we must conform to certain stereotypes. And this topic has exploded in the media and politics over the past few years, with debates over who can marry who can use what bathroom, and so forth. As for me, I identify as a straight man, and I am happily married to my wife of 2 years, and we have our son Theodore, who just turned 1. I also grew up in rural Missouri in a conservative family involved in politics. So you may be asking yourself, why is this guy talking about this? Well, throughout my undergraduate degree in biology, as well as working as a neuroscience researcher, I have been exposed to scientific evidence completely contrary to what I was brought up to believe. I now feel responsibility to share this knowledge with others so they can fully understand the reality of these issues and make informed decisions later in life. So today I am going to discuss the problems of viewing gender as a binary system while explaining some terminology, and then equip you with the knowledge to make informed decisions and hopefully share it with others. But before I get too far in, let me further explain the problem and provide some terminology. Specifically, the problem we are discussing here today is viewing gender as a binary system. But what does that actually mean? A binary system is one with only two options. A light is either on or it's off. It's either a 0 or a 1. A fan is spinning or it's not. But are humans either male or female? There are several binary decisions that occur in the human body. For example, when light hits your eye, neurons fire and you see light. A person can either have a widow's peak or not, be able to roll their tongue or not. The belief that gender follows this binary system is ingrained in our culture. We have men and women's bathrooms, sports teams, stores, you name it. And prior to 2015, if you were not a man and a woman, you did not qualify to marry and seek the same benefits as your straight peers. But if gender is not a binary system, then what is it? I hope to show you that gender exists upon a spectrum and solve the problem that we are proposing here today. First, let me explain what I mean by a spectrum by going back to some of my previous examples. Earlier I said light can either be turned on or turned off. But now imagine you have a dimmer switch and you turn it light up just a little bit up. Now you turn it halfway up and then all the way on. And a number can either be 0 or 1, but what about all the decimals in between? Even a fan has low, medium, and high settings. Even most biological decisions occur on a spectrum of some sort. You can either smell a very strong smell like a skunk, or you can smell flowers in a distant field. You can look at a dim little candlelight, or you can have the flashlight by a cop shined into your face after he's pulled you over for speeding. Even human height exists on a spectrum. But how can maleness and femaleness fit on the spectrum? We already have terms for many of these types of people, some of which you may be familiar with. The first term is intersex, or someone whose sexual anatomy and chromosomes do not match traditionally characteristics of male and female. We also have heterosexual, or straight, homosexual, and transgender. A transgender person is someone who does not identify with the assigned gender at their birth. But what makes men and women different to begin with? As many of you may know, humans have 2 sets of sex chromosomes. One was received by your father and the other from your mother. If you have 2 sets of X chromosome, or 1 set of 2 X chromosomes, then you are a female. If you have 1 X and 1 Y, you are a male. Therefore, it depends on the father to contribute either an X or a Y to determine the sex of the child. And this is the basics, but we'll dive deeper into this a little bit later. And when the fetus is forming in the mother's womb, it isn't until the 8th week that the fetus develops either testes or ovaries, according to the developmental biology textbooks written by Gilbert in 2014. The determination of gonads is called primary sex determination. And until this point, the gonad has cells that could form either gonad. In addition to primary sex determination, there is secondary sex determination as well. And to keep it simple, secondary sex determination is responsible for why men and women look different, including their genitalia. So what determines primary sex determination? As I discussed earlier, women have 2 X chromosomes and men have an X and a Y. The major difference is that the Y chromosome contains a single gene named SRY. If you have the gene and it works, then you produce testosterone and will form testes. If you don't, or it doesn't work, then your body defaults to producing estrogen and form ovaries. This concept was tested in an experiment performed by Koopman et al. Titled Male Development of Chromosomally Female Mice Transgenic for SRY in a 1991 volume of Nature. In this experiment, they inserted an SRY gene into a rat with 2 X chromosomes, or what would have been a female. They found that the rat formed testes and was a normally developed male. There's also evidence for the reverse in a 2014 experiment by Shi and Yang titled Molecular Mechanisms Involved in Mammalian Primary Sex Determination, published in the Journal of Molecular Endocrinology. They inactivated the SRY gene in a rat with an X and a Y, and ovaries were formed. In summary, primary plus secondary sex determination equals male or female. In the absence of the SRY gene, the body creates estrogen and forms ovary, and in the presence of SRY gene, creates testosterone and testes. But what I have described so far sounds quite a bit like the binary system that I'm trying to refute. So how does genetics explain the intersex individuals, or those who don't really fall into these traditional characteristics? That answer lies in the secondary sex determination. A person's body can have insensitivity to hormones like testosterone and estrogen, and causes the array of intersex individuals that we know today. One example of this is a person who lacks sensitivity to testosterone. And since everyone produces estrogen at some level in the body, they will develop as a sterile woman, lacking internal female genitalia. And one of the most extreme examples to get this point across is a disorder called 5-alpha-ketosteroid reductase 2 deficiency. While it has a long name, what it really means is that the person does not respond to testosterone very well. So when they hit puberty and produce a lot of testosterone, the external genitalia suddenly respond, and the penis enlarges, the scrotus descends out of what was thought to be a vagina. And this is according to an article by Price et al. In 1984 in the Journal of Clinical Investigation. For the sake of time, I will just briefly mention it is possible to have both gonads, and that is known as a hermaphrodite, as you probably know. Lastly, I will talk about how science can explain those who identify as transgender or gay. According to the developmental biology textbooks written by Gilbert in 2014, there's physical differences between the structures of the male and female brain. One study by Rossellini et al. In 2004 titled Sexual Partner Preference in the Hypothalamic Morphology and Aromatase in Rams and Physiology and Behavior looked at an area in the brain thought to control sexual behavior. And they found that the homosexual individuals had a more similar brain structure to females than their heterosexual male counterparts. In summary, it has been determined that there can be a difference between male, female, transgender, and gay brains, and this can be explained by hormones, genes, and to some extent learning, according to the developmental biology textbook written by Gilbert in 2014. Today I have provided many scientific explanations and examples of gender existing on a spectrum. Gender as a primary system, or binary system, has been ingrained in our society, and the science supports that this is just not true. So I propose that the information be considered when making policies and should be made known to the general public. And I want you to take this information, spread it to your friends and families, talk to your representatives and policymakers, and make informed decisions in your everyday life. Thank you for listening.